In 1948, the American dream had 4 wheels and 3 headlights. But if you wanted to buy one, you couldn't. Not because they weren't made, but because the most powerful men in the world made sure they disappeared. This is the Tucker 48, one of the safest, fastest, and most advanced cars, more advanced than anything Ford, GM, or Chrysler had on the drawing board during its time. It was so good, in fact, that it became a death sentence for the man who built it. Today, we're going behind the chrome to uncover the truth with a simple question. Why did the Tucker 48 fail? To understand why the Tucker was a threat, you have to look at the world through his eyes in 1946. World War II had just ended, and America was hungry for progress. But Detroit was fast asleep. Preston Tucker, a former police officer and obsessed engineer, noticed something. The big 3, Ford, General Motors, and Chrysler, were still selling pre-war designs. To him, these cars weren't worth the money. They were essentially 1941 pre-war relics with a fresh coat of paint and some extra chrome slapped on. Take the 1947 Ford Super Deluxe, for example. To Tucker, it wasn't just ugly, it was a rolling coffin. It was boxy and lacked even the most basic safety features. Having been a police officer, Tucker had seen the gruesome reality of what happened when a human body hit a solid steel dashboard during a wreck. He was done watching Detroit profit off selling old-fashioned vehicles, so he decided to make his own. He didn't want to just tweak a Ford, he wanted to bury it. He envisioned a car that looked like it had been stolen from a science fiction film, the Tucker Torpedo. It was low, sleek, and built by a man who realized that the future didn't have to be ugly. Tucker knew that to beat the giants, he had to offer what they wouldn't. He had to go beyond anything available in the market. And what better way to start than to build his own engine entirely from scratch? While Cadillac was still using heavy, sluggish cast-iron engines, Tucker went to the skies. He bought a Franklin O335 helicopter engine, modified it for water cooling, and slapped it in the back of his car. The result? 166 horsepower and enough torque to leave a Buick in the dust. This was one of the major breakthroughs for Tucker. But the real magic was the safety. Remember, this is 1948. Most cars were death traps, so Tucker tried to address one of the major problems with cars of that time: the lights. Tucker introduced the Cyclops Eye, a middle headlight that turned with the steering wheel so you could see around corners at night. He added a padded dashboard, decades before they were standard. And the most famous safety feature? The crash chamber, a reinforced area under the dash where passengers could dive if they saw an accident coming. It sounds primitive now, but in 1948, it was like discovering fire. All these features combined would have made the Tucker the ultimate car of the century. The big 3 didn't just ignore him, they panicked. If Tucker succeeded, every car they owned would be obsolete overnight. They had billions of dollars tied to their old designs. They couldn't let him win. And so they decided to sabotage him. First, it was the steel. In 1948, with the Cold War beginning, the U.S. was still rationing strategic materials. Tucker outbid everyone for $4 million for a surplus steel plant in Cleveland, yet the War Assets Administration mysteriously blocked him. While the big 3 sat on mountains of steel for their outdated 1948 models, like the underpowered 100-horsepower Fords, Tucker's supply lines simply evaporated. Then it was his reputation. On June 6, 1948, radio mogul Drew Pearson told millions that the Tucker was a scam that couldn't go in reverse. It was a calculated lie. Only the rough Tin Goose prototype had transmission issues. The 51 cars on the line were technical marvels that could fly past any Cadillac. But the damage was done, and as the public doubted, his dream began to bleed. When that wasn't enough, the big 3 activated their most powerful weapon: Senator Homer Ferguson of Michigan. Known in the halls of Washington as the Senator from Detroit, Ferguson was the industry's ultimate protector. Under his shadow, the Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, launched a relentless assault. Their smoking gun was Tucker's accessories program, where customers bought seat covers and radios early to secure a spot on the waiting list for the Tucker.
The SEC called it a con game, a fraudulent scheme to sell parts for a car that didn't exist. But this is the truth. Other post-war startups like Kaiser Frazer were using similar aggressive tactics to survive, yet they were left alone. On March 3, 1949, the trap snapped shut. The SEC didn't just investigate, they launched a full-scale raid on the 6 million square foot Chicago factory. They seized every ledger, every blueprint, and every secret, forcing the assembly line to a screeching halt just as the 51st car was being finished. They didn't just shut down a factory, they murdered his dream, ensuring that the most advanced car in America would never see a customer's driveway. If that wasn't enough, the federal government didn't just want to fine Preston Tucker, they wanted to erase him. The prosecution hit him with 31 counts of mail fraud, conspiracy, and violating the SEC regulations. Their star witness? A disgruntled former employee who claimed the car was a frailty, a ghost that couldn't actually drive. The media, fueled by leaks from Senator Homer Ferguson's office, the guy who basically was on Detroit's payroll, was already writing Tucker's obituary. They called him a P.T. Barnum in a suit. The trial dragged on for months, and the prosecution's strategy was simple: make Tucker look like a con artist who sold dreams for a car that didn't work. But Tucker's defense was too magnificent. He didn't call a single witness. Why? Because the cars were the only witnesses he needed. In a move that would make any modern lawyer have a heart attack, Tucker invited the entire jury out to the street. Lined up in the Chicago sun were 8 gleaming Tucker 48s. Tucker didn't just show them the cars, he had the jurors hop in. They saw the Cyclops Eye pivot, they felt the roar of the helicopter engines, and they realized they had been lied to. It's hard to call a man a fraud when you're currently sitting in his imaginary invention. After 28 hours of deliberation, the jury returned. The verdict? Not guilty on all 31 counts. Tucker was a free man, and for a brief moment, it looked like the underdog had actually won. But sadly, it was a hollow victory. The legal fees had drained his bank account, and bad publicity had scared away his investors. Preston Tucker won the battle, but lost the war. The factory was sold, the dream dismantled, and in the end, Preston Tucker died just 6 years later from lung cancer, his dream cut short. Tucker's story was so extraordinary that Hollywood couldn't resist it. In 1988, Francis Ford Coppola brought the saga to the big screen with Tucker, the Man and His Dream, starring Jeff Bridges as Preston Tucker. The movie didn't just dramatize his struggle against Detroit's giants, it celebrated his vision, his courage, and the innovation that made the Tucker 48 legendary. Audiences got to see the sleek Tucker torpedo roar across the screen, the Cyclops headlight pivot in real time, and the dream of a better car brought to life. For many, the movie was their first glimpse of this forgotten car. And here's the part that really puts things into perspective. In 1948, a brand new Tucker 48 cost about $2,450. That might not sound crazy today, but at the same time, a Ford Super Deluxe sold for around $1,300, and a Chevrolet could be had for even less. Tucker wasn't trying to be cheap, he was trying to be better. Adjusted for inflation, that Tucker price lands well over $30,000 in today's money, putting it closer to a modern luxury performance car than a family sedan. And yet, even at that price, people lined up. Thousands of buyers were willing to pay nearly double for a car that promised safety and speed. To the world, he was a failure. He promised thousands of cars and delivered only 51, but history has a funny way of correcting the record. Today, owning a Tucker 48 isn't just owning a car, it's owning a piece of a revolution. Out of the 51 built, 47 still survive. They are the holy grail for collectors. In 2012, one sold for $2.9 million. In 2024, they are nearly priceless.